Did you know that the Shinigami would be completely different? Hey guys, how are you? I hope you are fine. Today I bring you 66 facts that you probably didn't know about Death Note, and for those who don't know me yet, I'm the Monio, the interdimensional demon that talks about Death Note the most on YouTube, and you're on my channel. Death Note is inspired by another manga from 1973 called Fushigi and Eitko, where a young man finds a notebook, and the people who had their names written in it die. There are several live actions of Death Note, made by Japan and faithfully following the story of the manga, including a movie with an extra story in which L needs to save people who are being targeted by a scientific threat. There is a live action movie that tells an unprecedented story after the events of the anime. The movie is called Death Note, Light Up the New World, and in the plot 3 more Death Notes fall to Earth and are found by 3 different people. There is an official continuation of Death Note, which tells the story of a young man who finds the notebook and sells it to the US president. This continuation did not please anyone and was a complete failure. In the official sequel to Death Note, we learn that Niar has taken L's place, replacing his mentor as a detective. The Netflix adaptation and the manga continuation are the 2 most criticized works of the franchise to date. There is an extra volume that is like a Death Note Bible, which tells many details and secrets of the world where the story takes place. There is a way to make a pact with the Shinigami and get the Death Eraser, an eraser that has the power to undo what was written in the notebook, and depending on the situation, bring the dead person back to life. The author was afraid of not being able to publish the manga, as he thought that Death Note would not be successful because of the protagonist who was unconventional and not having much action. In the original idea, the Death Note would be a thicker and older looking book, like those old witchcraft books, but this was changed before the official release. Shinigami literally means god of death, and in ancient Japanese culture they were considered creatures that devoured the lifespan of humans. There are male and female Shinigami, but they don't have physical characteristics so evident that a human can tell what their gender is just by looking at them. Apples have the same effect on Shinigami that cigarettes have on humans. There are Shinigami who don't like to eat. This happens because they don't need to eat to survive, and those who eat, do it just as a hobby. The world of the Shinigami was a beautiful and lively place before the creation of the human world. At first, the Shinigami, filled with boredom, began to battle each other and cause a lot of chaos. To end the conflict, the king of the Shinigami made holes in the very reality of the Shinigami world so that they could observe humans and punish them, and this has satiated the boredom of the Shinigami through the ivy. The initial idea of the Shinigami is that they would have the appearance similar to human beings, with some seams crossing their body, but the idea was discarded. Another idea for the Shinigami designs was to design them as wizards, but that idea was scrapped as well. In Death Note it is said that the human who uses the notebook, after he dies, he cannot go to heaven or to hell, and the only world outside the human world that is shown in the work is neither heaven nor hell. Hell is the world of the Shinigami, so it is theorized that at least part of the Shinigami were once humans who used the Death Note. Each Shinigami has his own language and he uses it in his notebook, however some Shinigami can understand each other's language. In the world of Shinigami, there is a hierarchy, with the king at the top and below him there are also some leaders, responsible for maintaining order in that world. Every Shinigami has a power level, and this is directly related to their rank among Shinigami. There is a book with the laws of the world of Shinigami, and in it are described all the rules of what is allowed or not for Shinigami to perform in the human world. In Ryuk's data it is mentioned that he is extremely lazy, incompetent, and unable to perform the tasks that are required of his position. In the pilot chapter, 2 notebooks would fall to the ground, and 2 different students find them and each of them would use their notebook in different ways, but they thought that would make the story too complex and placed only 1 notebook at the beginning. If Light hadn't found the Death Note, he would have become the best investigative policeman in the world. In the world of Death Note, Kira's Day is celebrated, which is February 28. When asked about their favorite characters from the work, the writers and editors chose L, the Shinigami, and even Misa Amane, but none of the staff chose Light. The author wanted L to be more or less the same age as Kira, since according to him, if the two were of a very different age, it would not be interesting for the story. The author didn't make drawings of Nier and Mello, he asked his team to draw them, and that they had traits that somehow resembled L. In the original idea, Nier and Mello would be twin brothers and would also be L's children, not biological, but children adopted and raised by him. L would stack sugar cubes and then eat them, and this feature was split between Nier and Mello, since Nier stacks things and Mello eats sweets. Nier's real name is Neat River, and Mello's real name is Mile Keel. The author has already confirmed that L is the most intelligent character in the series, and that even his death was among the probabilities of his plan, since the least intelligent character is Misa Amane. Misa Amane was inspired by a famous Japanese singer who is also called Misa. In the initial version, Misa would have an even more gothic and a little more sensual look. When you have the Shinigami's eyes, what you actually see is a complex code that needs to be converted to understand exactly how much is the person's remaining life. The design of the Shinigami Ram was inspired by the ancient designs of the Medusa from Greek mythology. The author has already revealed that he had a strong desire to better develop each other's Shinigami, but didn't have enough time in his work to do that. The world of Shinigami is much more complex than what was shown in the anime, and it has large locations, rules, laws, and a completely different geography, in addition to portals to the human world. Death Note was the first anime to go viral in the US, to the point that the premiere of the first episodes came out practically at the same time in Japan and the US, being the first anime in the US to practice this type of simultaneous release. The anime has a total of 2 openings and 3 endings, and all of them are from very famous bands in Japan. There are several references to these songs in the anime, like in episode 13 where Misa is listening to one of these songs, or Matsuda's cell phone ringtone, which is also one of the opening themes. In 2010, a competition in Japan ranked Death Note as the 10th best manga of all time. The Death Parade anime made a reference to Death Note, inserting a character very similar to Light. That's because the team that made the Death Parade anime was the same as Death Note. The last Simpsons Halloween special episode is a homage to Death Note, with Lisa as the protagonist who finds the notebook. The Death Note games had the worst sales among game releases at the time, and because of that they didn't even get a translation outside of Japan. The King of Shinigami can create, change, or delete any of the rules in all Shinigami notebooks at the same time. Over time, the pages in the notebook renew themselves, and that's why it never ends. A religious extremist group in Russia created several public demonstrations against Death Note, stating that it would be an evil and game-influencing work. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the next content. The creator of Death Note created another successful manga that was also adapted into an anime, called Platinum End. Shinigamis are born with their clothes and spend their whole lives with them, not being able to remove them. Death Note had 108 chapters, and this number is very significant for Japanese culture. For example, at New Year's parties in Japan, a bell rings 108 times to welcome the new year. In the anime Full Metal Panic, a reference was made to the Death Note, with characters such as Light, L, and Misa appearing in one of the scenes. According to the author, Misa Amane was the most difficult character to develop among all of the series. The entire Death Note development team never personally met the author of the work, Tsugumi Ohba. The sweets that L eats directly affect his logical reasoning, being a true investigative fuel. The unusual way that the L sits, according to him, is to help his thinking. Somehow by staying in that posture his reasoning starts to work even better. Light and L's hair color were chosen to be starkly contrasting, to represent the two characters' personalities and values. During an interview talking about the format of the Death Note, The author said that the Shinigami can change the format of the notebook depending on the era in which the story takes place, so if it were in medieval England, for example, the notebook would have the format of parchment. Shinigami are technically immortal, but there are some circumstances that can make them cease to exist, such as failing to write human names in their notebooks for a long period, or falling in love with a human, for example. The author has already stated that before making Death Note, he had the dream of creating a more conventional shounen story, but he didn't feel able to write about it, and decided to focus on the story with a more serious tone. To write the story, the author revealed that the ideas came at unusual times, like when he was taking a shower, for example. There are 9 levels of punishment in the world of Shinigami, and depending on the crime that the Shinigami commits, he may be assigned to some of these punishments. This system was created to solve part of the problems in a world where its inhabitants are practically immortal. In the initial version of the work, it was possible to resurrect people who had died because of the Death Note, and there were some specific rules for that. The first time an editor read the initial draft of Death Note, he was confused and confessed that he did not understand what that work was about. Don't forget to watch the other videos in this playlist. Until next time, my people, demonic hugs.